Hi everyone, my name is Kenna Stubblefield and I am an elementary education major with a TESOL minor. And for my project 2, I focused on what's called language extinction, and for this specific, the Hawaiian language, it's more language endangerment than extinction, but fear of extinction is involved. So let's jump right in. So the four things that we'll be going through in this presentation is the Hawaiian language, just general information about it, what language endangerment is, and how it has affected the people of Hawaii. We'll talk about revitalization efforts among children and then revitalization efforts among adults. So first is the Hawaiian language. One language that is considered critically endangered is the Hawaiian language. The Hawaiian language and other Polynesian languages are part of the Austronesian language family, which is one of the largest and most widespread language families in the world. The Hawaiian language originated as an oral language among the island's natives until the true discovery of the island that happened in 1778. And when American missionaries arrived on the island, they developed an alphabet for the Hawaiian language and translated the Bible into this alphabet that they had created. And so with the introduction of the alphabet, Hawaiians began to print newspapers, books, Bibles, all in the Hawaiian language. And as these things were printed and passed out among the people, the natives learned to read, and so by the 1850s, it was reported that all Hawaiian adults were able to read and write in Hawaiian. So a few characteristics of the Hawaiian language is that it is made up of 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, and U. It contains 8 consonants, H, K, L, M, N, P, W, and the glottal stop. It has a vowel-consonant-vowel order and pattern with each word ending in a vowel. So every word must end in a vowel. Next, we'll talk about language endangerment. And so, what is language endangerment? Language endangerment occurs when a language is statistically likely to become extinct in the near future. And so, there are approximately 2,500 languages that are considered endangered of the world's 6,500 languages. And among those endangered languages, 576 are considered critically endangered. And for a language to be considered critically endangered, the youngest speakers of the language must be grandparents or older, and they speak the language partially and infrequently. So all of that is true for the Hawaiian language, as it is considered critically endangered. So, cause of endangerment. What caused the Hawaiian language to become endangered? So, the Hawaiian population and culture was extremely endangered and damaged by Western colonization. So as Western immigrants entered the islands, they brought diseases such as measles and leprosy, and the diseases reduced the Hawaiian population from 300,000 to 50,000 within a century. So a significant reduction in the amount of natives that were living on the island. So in turn, that reduced the amount of native speakers of the Hawaiian language. And then they also overthrew the government and replaced the state's official language with English. And so this began to suppress the native Hawaiians' culture and way of life. Along with that suppression, they banned the Hawaiian language from schools and replaced Hawaiian with English, so all instruction had to be given in English. There was to be no Hawaiian spoken in schools. And corporal punishment was even used if children spoke Hawaiian. So this led to adults and children feeling like it was necessary to learn English in order to reach success. And because of these things, the language nearly reached extinction. And for a language to be considered extinct, there are no speakers of the language left. And so the extent of the damage that was caused is that by the 1980s, there were fewer than 2,000 speakers of the Hawaiian language, with only a few dozen being under the age of 18. The endangerment, though, caused a spark among the Hawaiian natives. This movement that they created became known as the Hawaiian Renaissance. The Hawaiian language was a focus within the movement. After a nearly 90-year ban on the teaching and using of Hawaiian language in schools, it was once again taught and was named the official language of the state again in 1978. So some awesome things came from this cultural revolution that the Hawaiians started. So now we'll talk about revitalization efforts among children. So revitalization being to reignite the Hawaiian language and increase the amount of speakers. So one revitalization effort that took place was the Aha Punana Leo, and it was the first language immersion private preschool. It was started by a group of educators that were determined to educate in the Hawaiian language, as well as parents who wanted their children to be taught in Hawaiian and learn the native language rather than an English-only school. So this program was modeled after a preschool immersion program in Switzerland known as language nests. So this is a practice called language nests. Within the language immersion school, all education was to take place in the Hawaiian language, and English was not permitted. So the program was designed to incorporate traditional cultural practices in the classroom, as well as expand the students' knowledge of the Hawaiian language. Another revitalization effort that took place was the Papahana Kaaponi. Once these preschoolers graduated and moved on to public school age, K through 12, the parents and educators urged the State Department of Education to start a public Hawaiian language program. So in 1987, the Hawaii State Department of Education opened the public Hawaiian language K-12 school program, Papahana Kaaponi. The curriculum for this program was to not only focus on the language, but also the Hawaiian culture and studies of the indigenous people of Hawaii. In these schools, all instruction is also given in Hawaii, just like the immersion preschool. Students begin to be exposed to English in 5th grade, and they are exposed for 1 hour a day. And this revitalization effort has been extremely successful. Most students who enter the program in kindergarten speak English, but can respond to their teachers in Hawaiian by the end of the year. And when the program started, there were about 2,000 Native Hawaiian speakers left. And now the enrollment in one of these schools is about 1,700. So the enrollment in these schools now is about as much as the whole entire number of speakers that were left before these programs came about. So it has been very successful in revitalizing the language among children. In addition to revitalizing the language among children that are 18 and younger, efforts have also taken place to include adults. However, this effort has faced more difficulties because many adults were damaged by the dramatic measures that were taken while Hawaiian was banned from schools. They were convinced from a young age that success would only occur under the abandonment of the language, and so many Hawaiians today still suffer from that belief, and it's hard for them to move on from that. However, in order for this language to be revitalized, it must take place outside of schools as well as inside, and so there has been a push to create domains and environments for adults to learn to communicate in Hawaiian as well, and for children to be able to communicate with those adults. So one of those ways that they have tried to revitalize among adults is by offering classes at colleges and universities. So in the spring of 1997, approximately 750 adults were studying Hawaiian in adult community education classes. University classes in Hawaii are not always very accessible to all adults because of the high prices and university cutbacks. So those classes are not the only option. The private language immersion preschool offers language courses for parents and families of children attending their school. So it's another course and a setting that they can learn the language in outside of a university. There's a project funded by the Administration for Native Americans. It's a community activity-based program. The project launched 3 programs in the 1997 to 1998 school year. 2 of the programs focused on expanding the use of Hawaiian to men engaged in sports, while the 3rd program focused on the use of Hawaiian in the home. The 2 sports in this program were softball and volleyball, so people that participated in these programs and in these sports, they were to learn the language of the sport and speak Hawaiian to each other, and an opportunity for them to connect with other people. They were held about once a week for 30 weeks, and each meeting lasted 3 hours, so they were learning more than just sports language. They were discussing many different things. So the goal was for them to communicate meaningfully and enjoyably in Hawaiian. So this is a much less stressful environment than the classroom. It also funded a family education program, and that program provided families with task-based activities focusing on the social context of the home and community. These activities presented various opportunities for parents to talk with their children in Hawaiian, and individuals of these programs reported that they developed speaking skills and enjoyed the opportunities to practice and utilize what they have learned. So they really enjoyed what they were experiencing through these programs and their ability to speak and use Hawaiian. Although the Hawaiian language is still considered critically endangered, there is a growing number of Hawaiian speakers each year. The Kaiapuni program has expanded to 21 sites with an enrollment of more than 2,500 students annually. The immersion preschool served over 500 children and 2,000 families during the years 2019 to 2020. The programs in the Kaiamakali project are still developing and growing with a very positive response from families. Individuals working to revitalize the language are continually searching for new venues and avenues where Hawaiian language and culture can be represented, and they hope for Hawaiian language to become the norm again in Hawaii. And so if the Hawaiians need to pursue and embrace their native language and culture, although they have faced many challenges, it seems that their language will be revitalized eventually, maybe not entirely, but at least out of the critically endangered zone. Thank you.